Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I hope you are doing well. This is Muhammad Imran. You are all welcome to my channel. We will discuss today rhythm and meter in English poetry. In fact, the topic is very interesting and very important because analyzing a poem is not an easy task. So, whenever you analyze a poem, you have to look at the different aspects of a poem. For example, the structure, the context, the theme, the tone, figure of speech. So these all aspects are not as hard to be analyzed as to analyze rhythm and meter and to find out rhythm and meter in a line of poetry. So let's discuss what is rhythm and what is meter and how many types of meters are there. So let's discuss in detail. I hope you'll enjoy this lecture and you will learn a lot from this lecture. So keep watching. Before we start our lecture, we should know what are the main aims of this session. So the first aim is to define and understand the concept of rhythm and meter in English poetry. Our second objective is to understand the basic metrical compositions or structure in English poetry. While the third and the last aim is to understand different type of metrical foot use in poetry. Rhythm and meter. Rhythm may be defined as a pattern of recurring stresses and pauses. So what does recurring mean? Recurring means that something that happens again and again or the repetition of something. So when in a line of poetry stress and unstressed syllable are repeated again and again, so this repetition of unstressed and stressed syllable form a rhythm. So this is called in rhythm. Rhythm can also be defined as a swing or a movement that comes to our ear or we hear when we read a line of poetry. So then what is meter? Meter, in most poetry written in English, the beat comes out of a pattern of stressed and unstressed syllable. This basic pattern is called meter. So it means that when we organize the stress and unstressed syllable in a line of poetry, this pattern is called as meter. So then meter is the organization of the stress and unstressed syllable in a line of poetry. Or in other words, meter also means that the measurement of something. So we measure that how many syllables are there, how many stressed syllables are there, how many unstressed syllables are there. And then we organize that what is the organization of these stress or unstressed syllable, or in what pattern these stress and unstressed syllable are used in a rhythm. Sometimes we may have rhythm that formally we call Iambic rhythm, or sometimes we may have a rhythm what we call Trochaic rhythm. Sometimes we may have a rhythm that what we call Anapestic rhythm. So when we organize these all stress and unstressed syllable in a line of poetry, we call it meter. Then how can we differentiate rhythm from meter? So rhythm is simply the stress and unstressed syllable in a line of poetry. Or you can call it a swing or a movement that we hear in a line of poetry. Then what is meter? In a meter, we organize the stress and unstressed syllable. We measure that how many feet are used in a line of poetry. Then what is foot? Foot is the basic unit in a line of poetry. Sometimes we may have 2 feet, sometimes we may have 4 feet, sometimes we may have 6 feet, sometimes we may have 8 feet, sometimes we may have 10 feet, sometimes we may have 12 feet. So we can sum up that a rhythm is a recurring stressed and unstressed syllable in a line of poetry. And a meter is a regular arrangement of the syllable according to the number and type of beats in a line of poetry. So, on the one hand, we have recurring stressed and unstressed syllable in a line of poetry. That is called rhythm. And on the other hand, a regular arrangement of these syllables according to the number and type of beats. By beats we mean stressed and unstressed syllable. That how many stressed and how many unstressed syllable are there. So then the regular arrangement of syllable according to the number, how many are there, and the type of beats used in a line of poetry is called a meter. Here we have some more explanation to rhythm and meter, and I hope that you will be in a better position to understand it now. Now, rhythm occurs in a natural speech. It is the swing or sense of movement that the ear hears when successive syllables are stressed or unstressed. So the word successive means that there will be the repetition of stressed and unstressed syllable. Recurring stressed and unstressed syllable. So a kind of swing or beat will come to your ear and you will hear. So the successive repetition or the successive use of stressed and unstressed syllable in a line of poetry is called rhythm. On the other hand, we have meter. Most poetry has very strong rhythm because the poet writes into a poem a pattern of strongly stressed syllable alternating with a pattern of unstressed syllable. On the other hand, we have meter. Most poetry has very strong rhythm because the poet writes into a poem a pattern of strongly stressed syllable alternating with a pattern of unstressed syllable. Such a pattern is called meter. So when you organize these stressed and unstressed syllable in a line of poetry according to the number and type of beats, such pattern is called then meter. So this is the difference between rhythm and meter. Now, here is a question. Do all poems have meters? Not at all. Let's discuss it. Not all poems have meters, but that does not mean they lack rhythm. So even if a poem does not have a meter, still it will have a rhythm. So a rhythm is the soul of a poem. So you may not have a meter because the meter may be irregular, right? So you may not have a proper meter, but you will have a rhythm in a poem. So not all poems have meters, but that does not mean they lack rhythm. In a non-metrical poetry, rhythm is irregular. As I told you, that meter will be there, but it will be irregular. So in non-metrical poetry, rhythm is irregular and comes from the natural rise and fall of syllable. So the effect is sometimes enhanced by the repetition of words or word pattern. In these slides, we will discuss the difference between poetry and ordinary language. How reading of poetry is different from reading of ordinary language. Poetry has meter, So a pivotal criterion for the definition of verse meter is most simply put an organized pattern of strong and weak syllable. So when you organize a strong and weak syllable in a line of poetry, you're doing what? You are forming a meter, or you are dealing with a meter. So key to the definition in this provision that metrical pattern should be organized and in such a way that the alternation between accentuated syllable and weak syllable is repeated. Accentuated means strong syllable and weak syllable is repeated. So this repetition into regular phrasing across a line of verse is what makes rhythm. Before we discuss what is a stressed and unstressed syllable, we should know what is a syllable. So a syllable is a unit of word which must have a single vowel sound, and no matter how many consonant sounds are there. So in this unit of word, you must have a vowel sound, or this vowel sound may be accompanied by one consonant, two consonants, three consonants. So no matter how many consonants or consonant sounds are there, but you can't form a syllable without a vowel sound. So for a syllable, a vowel is a soul for the syllable formation, right? Like for example, if I say man, so in man we have two consonant and we have one vowel sound. Or if I say until, so here we have two syllable. One is un, because we have vowel a and we have consonant un. So un, and then we have another syllable till. So in till we have also one vowel sound and two consonant. So until is a word which has two units, and in each unit we have one vowel sound, and this vowel sound is accompanied by one, two or three consonant sound. So we can again sum up that a syllable is a unit of word which must have a vowel sound and one, two or three, or maybe more than two or three consonant sounds. Now what is a stressed and what is unstressed now? Sometimes we have two or three syllable word. So in this two or three syllable word, one of the syllable is stressed. When we say stress, so you are giving extra force or you emphasize on one syllable, while two syllable are unstressed. So whenever we have a two or three syllable words, so in those two or three syllable words, one of the syllable will be stressed, while two or three other syllable would be unstressed. For example, we have a word until. So you can see here that in until, the first syllable is unstressed, while the second syllable till is stressed. So here we have explanation. A stress or accent is a greater amount of force. So when you are giving greater amount of force to a syllable is called a stressed syllable. Given to one syllable in a speaking, then is given to another. So we favor a stressed syllable with a little more breath and emphasis, with the result that it comes out slightly louder, higher in pitch, or longer in duration than other syllable. So which one is a stressed one? We emphasize, okay, or we make emphasis, because the emphasis comes because of what? That is the result of slightly louder. We pronounce it a little bit louder than other syllable, or higher in pitch compared to other syllable, or longer in duration to other syllable in a word. So this longer in duration or higher in pitch or slightly louder it differentiates this syllable from other syllable. So this syllable is getting stronger or is a stressed one, while other syllables are unstressed then. So in this manner, we place a stress on the first syllable of the word, such as eagle. Now the word eagle has two syllables. One is E and another one is gull. So eagle, the stress goes on first syllable, so we say eagle. If the stress would have gone on the second syllable, then we would pronounce it as eagle. So it is not eagle, it is eagle. Similarly, we have another word that is pronounced as impact, right? When it has also two syllables. One is im and another syllable is pact, impact. So it is not pronounced as impact. If you pronounce it as impact, so then you are stressing the second syllable. But actually here, the second syllable is not stressed. The first syllable is stressed, so we pronounce it as impact, right? Not impact, but impact. We have another word that is open. So open, we have also two syllables. One is o, while another one is pun. Open. So the stress goes on the first syllable, we say open. We don't say open. If we say open, so then we are stressing the second syllable. But actually the second syllable is not stressed. The first one is stressed, so we say open. And here we have another word, and that is pronounced as statue, not statue. We have two syllables, stray, chew. Not statue, but we say statue. So the stress goes on the first syllable and we pronounce it as statue. While in some other words like cigar, it's not pronounced as cigar. It is pronounced as cigar. So here the stress goes on the second syllable. We have two syllables. One is se and one is gar. So we pronounce it as cigar. So you see that the stress goes on the second syllable, so we say cigar rather than cigar. Similarly, we have another word that is mystique. So you see that we have again two syllables. One is miss and another one is teak. Mystique. So we don't say mystique. If we do say mystique, then you are putting the stress on the first syllable, which is wrong. So you can't say mystique, you will say mystique. Similarly, we have another word that is precise. You see, we have two syllables, pre and size, precise. So we don't say precise. Because if you say precise, so you are stressing the first syllable. You will say precise, precise on the second syllable. And the last word here we have that is also two syllable, until. It is not until. Most people, we hear people pronounce it as until. It's not until. You will pronounce it until because the stress goes on the second syllable. That is until, not until. If you say until, so you are stressing the first syllable. But actually the first syllable is not stressed here. You will say until, and when you say until, so you are actually stressing the second syllable, which is the exact pronunciation of until. Here we have a complete chart of the most common signs which are used in English poetry. So let's discuss. To describe meter, we use a sit-up sign that suggests how the line is to be read. Below is a list of the most common signs. So most common signs. So this is the first sign. You can see here that this sign is used to indicate a strong or stressed syllable in a line of poetry. You can see this sign. The second one is this one, and it is used for a weak or unstressed syllable. So next time when you come across with this sign, so it will indicate that a syllable is a weak or unstressed. And when you come across with this sign, so this sign will indicate that the syllable is a stressed one or it is a strong syllable. Similarly, that whenever you come across such kind of sign, it is called a bar and is used to mark metrical division in a line, and each unit thus marked is called a foot. So between each foot you will find this kind of sign. So when you find this sign, so it will indicate that, that it is 1 foot. So to divide the feet in a line of poetry, you will find this kind of sign. And this kind of sign will indicate that it is 1 foot, this is another foot, this is another foot, this is another foot. For example, you may have 2 feet, you may have 4 feet, you may have 10 feet, you may have 12 feet. And each foot will be divided with the help of this bar. And the last sign you can see here, this one, it is used to indicate, it is called Kesura, and it is used to indicate a pause in a line of verse. So as we have a pause, like in sentences, when we complete a sentence, so we have also a pause in poetry. And this pause is indicated by this sign, which is technically called Kesura. What is scansion? The process of marking the meter is called scansion. So when you, what is scansion then? The process of marking meter in a line of poetry is called scansion. Now to scan a line of poetry, first mark the accented mean strong syllable. So whenever you want to scan a line in a poetry, first of all, you have to identify the strong or accented syllable, which are strong or accented syllable, and then the unaccented syllable. First you have to find out what is the stressed syllable, and then you have to find out what is unstressed. This is like the process of like a marking, right? Like what to do scansion or to mark stress and unstressed syllable. So whenever you are scanning a line in a poetry, so to do scan, you have to do first word, you have to mark strong syllable and then weak syllable, accented syllable and then unaccented syllable. Now followed by a bar and then come bar, foot, right? You have a line of poetry. You have to do the first thing, that to mark the accented syllable, the stressed one. The second task you have to do, you have to mark unaccented syllable. And the third task you have to do in scanning, you have to draw a bar. And the bar will indicate that 1 foot is completed. This is 1 foot, 1 unit in a line of poetry. And in this process of scanning, you will divide each line into a unit of measurement, and that is called foot. Right? This is unit of measurement. That is called a foot, consisting of 2 or 3 syllables. Now, what is a foot? A foot is a unit in a line of poetry. And in each foot, we may have 2 or 3 syllables. Right? And out of these 2 or 3 syllables, 1 will be stressed and 2 will be unstressed. Or 1 will be stressed and 1 will be unstressed. If in a foot we have 2 syllables, so 1 will be stressed and 1 will be unstressed. And if in a foot we have 3 syllables, so 1 will be stressed and 2 will be unstressed. You can see here 2 or 3 syllables, one of which is stressed And the four most common feet in English poetry are. Now, the four common feet in English poetry are. Now we will discuss what are the four most common feet in English poetry are. So we will discuss one by one in coming lecture. So keep watching and wait for the second lecture. That will be the extension of this lecture. So in the next lecture, we will discuss the four most common feet in English poetry, how they are used, how they are structured, and how to identify them. So thank you so much. This was all about this lecture, and we will have another lecture. We will start from here. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I hope you would have learned and enjoyed part first of this lecture. In part first, we defined what is rhythm and what is meter, and we differentiated rhythm from meter. And we also discussed in detail what is stressed and what is unstressed syllable. And we also talked about what is syllable. And now here we are with part 2 of the lecture that is about rhythm and meter. So here we will talk about types of metrical foot. So let's begin our lecture. Types of metrical foot. The system of accentual syllabic meter derives from metrical pattern of classical Greek and Roman poetry, even though it cannot easily be transferred from classical languages into English, since in classical languages meter depend on syllable length, whereas in English it depends on word stress. So there are a large number of different types of metrical foot measurement, but the most common ones are the following. So there are many metrical foot, but here we will discuss the most common foot which are used in English poetry. Principal meters in English poetry. Here with example are some of the principal meters we find in English poetry. Each is named for its basic foot or molecule, usually one stress and one or two unstressed syllable. So in a foot we have one stress or one or more than unstressed syllable. So the first one here we have, that is iambic. Iambic foot that consists of unstressed and stressed syllable. So in iambic foot we have two syllable. The first one is unstressed while the second one is stressed. So it will be unstressed and stressed. Here we have the example of iambic foot. As earlier I told you that iambic foot consists of two syllables. The first one would be unstressed while the second one would be a stressed one. So let's see that how can we read this line. So the falling out of faith, full friends, renew, wing gaze of love. So let's identify when we say the fa. D is unstressed and fa is a stressed one. So the fa, and then we have ling out. Ling would be unstressed and out would be stressed. So the fa, ling out. And then we have of faith. Of would be unstressed and faith would be a stressed one. So the fa, ling out of faith. And then we have full friends. Full would be unstressed and friends would be a stressed one. And then we have renew. So re would be unstressed and neave would be a stressed one. So renew. And then we have wing is. Wing would be unstressed and is would be stressed. Wing is. And then we have of love. Of would be unstressed and love would be a stressed one. So overall we can read this line in this way, that the falling out of faith, full friend, renew, wing gaze of love. So now if we focus, so the rhythm of this line would be unstressed and stress, unstressed and stress, unstressed and stress. So this unstressed and stress pattern in this line would make a rhythm of iambic. So iambic is unstressed and stress. Now this is a rhythm. Now when we regularly arrange the syllable according to the number and types of beat, so this would make a meter then. The second most common foot in English poetry which is used is called anapestic. In anapestic foot we have 3 syllable, or anapestic foot consists of 3 syllable. The first 2 syllable would be unstressed, while the third one would be a stressed one. Let's see the example. Here we have I am more. So the first I and M, they would be unstressed syllable. I, 1 syllable, am, 2nd syllable. So the first 2 syllable would be unstressed, while mo would be a stressed one. So I mow. And then we have another, that is mark of. Mark is unstressed, of is unstressed, and all would be a stressed one. So mark of all. And then we have 3 more syllable. So I would be unstressed, and sir would be unstressed, and way would be stressed. So I sir way. So overall in this line we can see that we have I am mo, 1 foot, mark of all, 2 foot, I sir way, 3 foot. So we have here 3 foot, and how many syllable? In 3 feet we have 9 syllable, and in 9 syllable we have 3 stressed and we have 6 unstressed. The third most common foot which is used in English poetry is called trochaic or trochee. In trochaic or trochee foot we have 2 syllable. The first one is stressed, while the second one is unstressed. It's quite the opposite of iambic. In iambic we have unstressed and stressed. So iambic foot consists of 2 syllable. The first one is unstressed and the second one is stressed. While in trochaic we have a foot. Trochaic foot consists of 2 syllable. The first one is stressed, while the second one is unstressed. Let's see the example. Double, double, toil and trouble. So in double we have 2 syllable. Da, bul. Da is stressed and bul is unstressed. So da, bul, 1 foot. And then we have double again. Da is stressed and bul is unstressed. So we have another foot, 2 foot. And then we say that toilant. Toil is a stress and ant is unstressed. So toilant. Toil is stress and ant is unstressed. And then we have trouble. So in trouble, tro is stress and bull is unstressed. So in this line we have how many foot? Double, 1 foot. Then again double, another foot. Then toilant, another foot. And trouble, another foot. So here we have in this line of poetry we have 4 feet. And in 4 feet we have 8 syllable. And in 8 syllable the first one is stressed while the second one is unstressed. Fourth most common foot which is used in English poetry is called dactyl or dactylic. So dactyl foot consists of 3 syllable. The first one would be stress and the last 2 would be unstressed. So it is quite opposite of anapestic. In anapestic foot consists of 3 syllable. The first 2 are unstressed and the third one is stress. And here in dactyl we have a foot consists of 3 syllable. The first one would be a stressed one and the last 2 would be unstressed. So the take would be, take is one syllable word. So the take would be a stressed one, and her would be unstressed, and up would be unstressed. So take her up, take her up. And then we have 10 would be stress, der would be unstressed, and lee would be unstressed. So tenderly. So take her up tenderly. So in this line we have basically 2 feet, and in each foot we have 3 syllables. The first one is stress and the last 2 are unstressed. So we have here 2 feet, and in 2 feet we have 6 syllables. In 6 syllables, 2 syllables are stress, while the 4 syllables are unstressed. So let's sum up this all slide now. In this slide, we discuss 4 major or 4 principal meters which are used in English poetry. The first one is iambic, consists of 2 syllables. The first syllable would be unstressed and the second would be stress. Anapestic foot consists of 3 syllables. The first 2 would be unstressed and the third one would be a stressed one. The third one is trochaic or trochaic. The first one would be stressed one, while the second one would be unstressed. And the last one is dactyl or dactylic, in which the first one would be a stressed one and the last 2 would be unstressed. So here we can see that iambic is the opposite of trochaic, because in iambic unstressed and stressed, and in trochaic stress and unstressed. And anapes would be the quite opposite of dactyl, because in anapes we have 2 unstressed and then stress, and in dactyl or dactylic we have the first one stress and the last 2 unstressed. Accentual syllabic meter. By far the largest number of poems in English use accentual syllabic meter. In this metrical system, both the number of stresses and the number of syllables between the stresses are regular. Each single unit of stress and non-stress is called foot. Strictly speaking, the number of syllables should be identical for each line, but it is very often the case that a line leaves one metrical foot incomplete, thus varying the number of syllables as a whole. Here we have a practice. Against an arm a sheep was tied. The butcher's knife in blood was dyed. Be not the first by whom the new are tied, nor yet the last to lay the oar aside. She walks in beauty like the night, of cloudless climes and stray skies, and all that's best of dark and bright meet in her aspect and her eyes. Here the 3 metrical feet contains 3 beats apiece, and in a strong weak configuration. We have the first one strong and then weak configuration, which is known as dactyl. This marks the line as a whole an example of dactylic trimeter. So here you can see that against an arm a sheep was tied. So this is the example of dactyl foot. Here we have some practice on iamb or iambic foot. So if you want to remember iambic foot, you have to remember this beat, da-dum. So d would be unstressed and dum would be stressed. So da-dum, 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 da-dum. D-dum, d-dum, d-dum. So d would be unstressed and dum would be stressed. So let's see an example that a man, would be unstressed and man would be stressed. So a man would make 1 foot, that would be iambic. And then put on, put would be unstressed and on would be stress. Put on, this we have another foot. And then his hat, his would be unstressed and hat would be stress. So a man put on his hat. in this line we have 3 feet, and in 3 feet we have 6 syllables, and in 6 syllables we have 3 unstressed and 3 stress. Let's see the second line. And walked, and walked, and walked. We have here 1 foot, and walked along, and this is another foot. And then the strain, this is another foot. So, and walk along the strain. Again, in this line we have 3 feet. In each foot we have 2 syllables, and overall in this line we have 6 syllables. Let's come to the third line. And there he met, and there, that is 1 foot. He met another. So, and there, unstressed and stress. He met unstressed and stress. And now, unstressed and stress. The man, unstressed and stress. So, in this line, then we have 4 feet. And there, 1. He met 2. And now, 3. The man, 4. So we have here 4 feet and 8 syllables. Next line. Whose hat was in his hand. Whose hat, 1. Was in, 2. His hand, 3. Here we have 3 feet, 6 syllables. 3 are unstressed and 3 are stressed. So that's taken from Samuel Johnson, and this was the best example of iambic. So iambic, da-dum, unstressed and stress, unstressed and stressed. Here we have the example of trochaic. Trochaic is the opposite of iamb. So in iamb we have unstressed and stressed, and in trochaic we have stress and unstressed. Remember this beat, dum-da. The first one was da-dum, and this is dum-da. So dum is stress and da is unstressed. So the first one here we have hark, hark-da. So hark would be a stress one and da would be unstressed. Hark-da. And then we have araf. R would be a stress one and off would be unstressed. And tenez. Ten would be a stress one and is would be unstressed. And sounding. Sound would be stress one and ding would be unstressed. So how many feet do we have? Harda, 1 foot. Araf, 2 foot. And second foot. And 10 is third foot. And sounding. And here we have 4 foot. So 4 feet are there. So in 4 feet we have 8 syllables. 4 are stress. The first 4 are stress. And then we have unstressed. The second example, heart's width, 1 foot, anxious, second foot, fair are, third foot, and bounding, 4 foot. So 4 feet again are there. So hearts would be stress, width would be unstressed. Heart width, anxious, ank would be stress, stress would be unstressed. Fair are, fair would be stress, r would be unstressed. Bounding, bound would be stress, ding would be unstressed. And then we have the third example. Now, haul off. Haul would be stress, off would be unstressed. Haul off. Justice. Just would be stress, test would be unstressed. And then crowd-sir. Crowds would be stress and sir would be unstressed. Rounding. Round will be stress and ding would be unstressed. So how many syllables are there? How many feet are there? Haul off 1, justice 2, crowd-sir 3, and rounding 4. So 4 feet are here. Here we have example of dactyl, which is dum da da. Dum, the first one would be a stress one and the last 2 would be unstressed. So dum da da, dum da da, dum da da. So K nun 2. So the first one, K would be stress, and then nun 2, none unstressed and 2 unstressed. So K nun 2, right of them. canon to right of them, canon to left of them, canon in front of them. Way leading tendered. So we have here in dactyl we have 3 syllables. The first one is stressed and the last 2 are unstressed. Here we have the example of Anapestic, that is da-da-dum, da-da-dum. So the first 2 are unstressed and the last one is stressed one. I conceive you may use any language you choose to indulge in without impropriety. Here we have the 5th type of foot which is used in English poetry but which is not most common, right? It is also used but it is not as common as we discussed the previous 4 ones. So this is called in spondee. Spondee, here we have 2 syllables and both of them are stressed. Dum-dum, dum-dum. So here you can see that is bark-bark, bark-bark. So bark-bark, bark-bark. So here we have 2 feet and in each foot we have 2 syllables and both are stressed. So bark-bark and bark-bark. Here we will discuss what is monometer, what is dimeter, what is trimeter, what is tetrameter, what is pentameter, what is hexameter, what is heptameter and what is octameter. So to name the meter of a poem, one usually combines the term giving the stress pattern and number of stresses per line. A line of poetry that is written in iambic meter and has 4 accent or stress is called iambic tetrameter. If, for example, that a line of poetry is there and there we have the pattern is iambic, unstressed and stress, but we have 4 stress and 4 unstressed syllable, so we would call such line as iambic tetrameter. If in a line of poetry we have 10 feet, right? If in a line of poetry we have 10 syllable and we have 5 feet. Remember, if in a line of poetry we have 10 syllable and we have 5 feet and these syllables are patterned as unstressed and stress, 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 unstressed and stress. So such kind of meter would be named as iambic pentameter. Penta mean 5. The meter name would be pentameter. And the stress pattern would be, rhythmic pattern would be iambic. So iambic pentameter, iambic tetrameter, and iambic monometer, and iambic dimeter. So iambic can be monometer, iambic can be dimeter, iambic can be trimeter. If there are 3 feet, iambic would be trimeter. If there are 1 foot, iambic would be monometer. If there are 2 feet, iambic would be iambic dimeter, and trimeter, and tetrameter, and pentameter, and hexameter, and heptameter, and octameter, and go on. So this is the way that we can see. Similarly, we can also focus like a trochaic. So trochaic can be monometer, dimeter, trimeter, tetrameter, pentameter, hexameter, heptameter, and octameter. So these all pattern that we discussed in previous slides can be in this pattern according to their syllables and according to like the number of feet. A line written in dactyl with 2 accents is called dactylic dimeter. So canon to right of them, canon to left of them, canon in front of them, valid and tundred. So thank you so much. This was all about this lecture, and we talk in detail about rhythm and meter. If you have any question related to this topic, so please you can ask your question in comment box. Thank you so much.